And from my position, I think the biggest thing I can do, or the most important role I have other than driving culture, is the people we put on the team in leadership spots. Because I don't want to hire a person that constantly needs me to tell them what to do. I want to hire a person that says, hey, I'm going. I'm like, whoa, you're a race car on a dirt track, right? Slow down a little bit. And I've had the good fortune in my career to work for a bunch of great guys that told me that exact same thing.
Put that coffee down.
I'm not here to waste your time, okay? I certainly hope you're not here to waste mine. So I'm going to keep this short.
Helen, we're both in sales. Let me tell you why I suck as a salesman.
Most valuable commodity I know of is information. Wouldn't you agree?
Coffee's for closers only.
Well, hello there, friends. Welcome back to the Behind Your Back podcast with me, Bradley Hartman, founder and CEO of Behind Your Back Sales Company, where it's our mission to help you sell more, faster, at higher margins, and have more fun doing it. As for this podcast, we talk about leadership, personal productivity, time management, and the craft of selling in the construction industry. Thank you to Capital One Trade Credit for being our presenting sponsor. If you, my friend, are interested in increasing cash flow, increasing revenue while decreasing risk by leveraging a powerful digital platform to make it easier for your customers to buy from you, I believe, would be interested in learning more about Capital One Trade Credit. So I'm excited to bring to you today my conversation with Mr. Abhi Singh of New South Construction Supply. Now, if the name New South Construction Supply rings a bell, it is for a reason. Good memory. It's because we've had the owner and CEO, Mr. Jim Sobek, on the show in the past. He's a very insightful guy. He is very funny, and we always learn a lot from him. So he's been on the show before, and we have heard about Abhi Singh in years past. Several years ago, when I did not know Abhi by name, I knew Jim was actively pursuing, playing the long game, and he told me about this guy that he was pursuing, and on a long enough timeline, he would get him on board. Well, that actually happened, and the individual turned out to be Abhi Singh. And as you will hear, he fits really well alongside Jim. He's smart, he's funny, we talk about sales, we talk about marketing, we talk about leadership, and we also talk about all the exciting things that are happening at New South. So let's dig into Abhi just a little bit more. Abhi is the Executive Vice President and COO for New South. He is a 23-year industry veteran and is responsible for all sales, operations, purchasing, mergers, and acquisitions for New South. He came to New South from a two-step building materials distributor, Mid-Am Building Supply, where he was the Vice President of Sales and Marketing. Abhi also previously served as a managing director of Harvey Commercial Solutions in New England. He also was a general manager at J&H Aitchison and worked at Whitecap Construction Supply. So Abhi has been around the industry in multiple leadership roles. And as you will hear, again, he's smart, he's funny. You're going to learn a lot from this episode. I'm excited to share it with you. As always, thank you for listening. Please enjoy my conversation with Abhi Singh, Executive Vice President and COO of New South Construction Supply. Mr. Abhi Singh, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Brad. Good to be here.
Yeah, thrilled you're here. Excited to talk about a whole host of things. We're talking about leadership. We're going to talk about culture. We're talking about sales. First, I want you to maybe give a brief description of the video you sent me that you have your team watch several times a year about culture, about Dan Clark, and maybe why it's so meaningful to you.
Yeah. So I had a good fortune meeting Dan about 10 years ago at a speech, and it just blew me away, right? And he talks about all these different things. If you imagine Dan, he was a college football player, went pro, had some significant struggles in life from a physical aspect when he got injured, and brought himself all the way back to the top of his profession. And it's all about culture for him. And he goes around, he's a consultant for the NFL, and there's this wonderful video that he gave. I think I sent the link to you too.
Right.
And he talks about comparing and contrasting the 1990-something Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus the 1990-something Dallas Cowboys. Mm-hmm. Winning his team in the season, losing his team in the season. And he walks in, and it's all about the fit and why are people here? And it comes back to why are you here? And when he interviewed the Buccaneers, he walks in, and I won't steal his thunder, but he walks in this organization, and it makes probably the worst lumberyard you've ever seen look good, right? I mean, there's pizza boxes in the corner. There's mixed up chairs. One chair's broken. Lady's chewing her gum. She's like, yeah, go in the back. And no one knows who he is. And then he walks into the Cowboys, and it's that white glove service, right? And I make our team watch it for the sheer fact is this is what we want Emulate to be. But the core message in it is, why are you here? And you have guys that are here, to do a job and just get a paycheck. And you have guys that are here, and girls that are here, I should say, to win something. And whether that's an order, a customer, the industry, whatever it is, but they're very focused on what their mission is. And what resonates with my team is, as we're growing the way we're going, we can't forget what we're here to accomplish, right? And we're here to provide opportunities for our people, and we're here to be the best we can in the space we want to play in. And when you keep pulling it back, once we watch on a quarterly basis, just as a good refresher. This is what we're here to do. This is why we're here, and we resonate that throughout the team. So when someone comes into a New South branch, hey, how are you? Good to see you. Can I help you? Versus, hey, hold on a second, I'm on the phone. Right. And no contractor wants that. You want to feel special, and that's what we aim to do.
Yeah. The thing that I took away too and started thinking about our own team is everyone has a role to play.
Right.
And how we make people feel, what the perception is. Everyone can do that. And in the video, he talks about the different feeling he got from the receptionist. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, he felt like he was an annoyance. She was on the phone talking to her friend. He had to sit out there. The Dallas Cowboys, he said, took me by the hand, introduced me to everyone. He goes, I thought we were going steady after about 15 minutes, made me feel like I was the most important person on earth. And you're like, that's the receptionist, right? Question for you though. And the mismatched chairs jumped out for me. So he walks in, like the decor has changed. I think someone might watch that and say, hey, if we look at our lumberyard, we have some guy who's still wearing shirts that, have the old logo from 6 years ago. And, maybe there isn't this consistent look and feel. Does that mean I got to go spend millions of dollars and redo the trucks and new shirts for everyone and rebranding and do all that? Understanding the scope of your business, what would your recommendation be there when it comes to that, maybe some of the inconsistencies, whether it's the chairs or it's the shirts they wear or anything along those lines?
Well, I think it's up to our people. We go around and our team always hears me say, it's up to you. And it's almost nauseatingly. And they're like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do here? But the teams that we have, they understand why they're here. And if they want to wear, a Foo Fighters shirt and a Harley Davidson shirt, hey, rock on, do it. But it's not so much the appearance as what's underneath. That's what's got to resonate out.
Yeah.
Personally, when I was at the branch level, I made sure my team had always had a logoed shirt on, but we gave them 8 or 9 options. So some folks wore golf shirts, a couple guys wore tank top, which wasn't pretty. And then, you just went from there. But it's the culture and the theme and the message you want to build, and what's your brand, and your people are the biggest proponents of that. So if you say this is what you have to wear every day, I worked for a company in my formative years, which was a great organization, but you had to wear a name tag every day. Like, are you kidding me? But you have to wear name tags? Like, seriously? I mean, we sell X product. That was an annoyance, right? And so we don't want to go that far.
Yeah.
But we give our folks roughly $400 or $500 a year just in clothing, in New South clothing. Get whatever you want, and it builds that pride, right? They come around like, hey, we're New South. We have some folks that are thinking about getting New South tattooed on their arms. I don't advise doing that.
The can-do bear.
The can-do bear. That would be awesome, right? That would be cool. I'm not tough enough to do that, yeah. So
tell me about that phrase. It's up to you. Over the years in your leadership and years in management, how have you been able to coach people or set up a framework where you feel confident? Because I think this idea of going to the teams, empower them and say, this is your story. It's up to you.
Right.
I think that feels like something we all want to be able to do.
Right.
And then you might come back and other people says, actually, this location with this manager, that would scare the hell out of me. Can't leave it up to them. How do you develop your team to the point where you can truly say, it's up to you. Whatever you guys choose to do, right? It's, that book. It's your ship.
Right.
You guys got to own that.
Right.
Any lessons you've learned along the way of things you got to do or things that you can't do that might be somewhat non-obvious?
The it's up to you phrase is we've all worked for that organization or that person says, this is how you're going to do it. No matter what, get it done.
Right.
And you're like, it's just not right. It's not going to work. You don't get it. And from my position, I think the biggest thing I can do, or the most important role I have other than driving culture, is the people we put on the team in leadership spots. Because I don't want to hire a person that constantly needs me to tell them what to do. I want to hire a person that says, hey, I'm going. I'm like, whoa, you're a race car on a dirt track, right? Slow down a little bit. And I've had the good fortune in my career to work for a bunch of great guys that told me that exact same thing. Greg Rayfield, Mark Thompson, JJ Jackson, but a guy named Rick Phantom, who's the president and CEO of the Hajoka Corporation. He, his motto was, it's up to you. You have the freedom to live into your dream.
Can you say that again?
You have the freedom to live into your dream.
You have the freedom to live into your dream.
Yeah. Okay. And if you haven't met Rick, you have to. He's that guy, right? He's phenomenal. He shared this formula that has really been, I'd say, a cornerstone of my success. And it's the only business formula that's only worked 100% of the time. And it's L times P times C equals R, right?
L times P times C equals R. Okay.
Right. And this is, I totally took this from him. It's my biggest takeaway. So, Rick, thank you.
That's why I'm writing it down.
Yeah.
If it's good, I'm stealing it from you. So great.
But the R is results in that formula, right? It's always, everyone's focused on the results. And Bradley, I want you to do it this way because we want to get the results, right? And your results say it's a 10, and it's great. But if you focus on the left side of that equation, the L being leadership, the P being people, and the C, it should actually be C squared with customers and culture.
Okay.
And you drive those, you increase any one of those, it exponentially increases the result.
Okay.
So my job is to put the right leaders in place, coach them on some of the mistakes I made, which are, the list is long but distinguished, and put the right people in and entice them to chase the right customers.
Okay.
And if we have the right leaders and the right people, the culture is going to come, right? And then it's execution, and it's up to them. But there's no way I can sit in Greenville, South Carolina, and tell a guy in Greensboro, North Carolina, how to run his business. Mm-hmm. If I do, either I'm the wrong guy or he's the wrong guy. So something's got to change.
Tell me about the C squared. Mm-hmm. You got culture in there. That seems obvious. The leadership and the people. Love that. Talk to me about choosing your customers, because it's not uncommon to come into an organization where we're trying to help on sales performance, maybe it's sales process, but just getting more cohesion, less friction, to choose better customers. And when we talk to some of the sales reps about who they're targeting, how they're making progress, and some of this cost to serve, do we enjoy servicing this type of customer? I will hear one, list or cast of characters, and then I'll talk to leadership. And they're like, who's chasing them? I'm like, Dan, I just talked to him at this location. And there's somehow there's miscommunication there. So I think it's really powerful that in this formula is you get to choose your customers. Right. I think sometimes we forget that. Can you go into that a little bit? Yeah.
So everyone chases the giant customer, right? Everyone wants those big dollars and knock it out of the park. And I think you heard Jim on a podcast and previously talk about the gazelles, right?
Yes.
There's only very few gazelles.
Yep.
But to choose your customer, you have to define what your gazelle looks like.
Yeah.
Right. And we want customers that are going to partner with us, that are going to drive the business with us and not be in a bid and spec every single time, but understand what we bring to the table. And our people drive the service, and they drive the customer experience. And it goes back to that Cowboys versus Buccaneers thing, right?
Okay. Yep.
So there's a couple of customers that they're huge. They could significantly change our business, but we're not going to chase them because they're hard to deal with. They nitpick every single thing, and they look at you as a vendor, not a partner.
Okay.
And that's just not our game. Mm-hmm. If you want to come in with us and sit down, and we're worth more, depending on the customer, we quantify it a little bit differently. And we do a cost to serve analysis. And part of my role is making sure that our cost to serve customers are all positive net customers. At the end of the day, we all need to make money, right? And we need to make money to be able to support our customers. They make money to support their customers, and it's all interlinked. But there's nothing wrong with sitting down with the customer and say, hey, on every order, I either make or lose X amount of dollars on you.
Right.
And if I'm losing money on you, I can continue to service you. And most of the times when we have those conversations with folks, our peers there, say, what do you mean? And one customer said, we were issuing about 10 to 15 invoices per truckload. He's like, why don't we just give that on one PO and one shipment? I'm like, I don't know. That's a great question. That would help us significantly, right?
Right.
So he figured out, and he found a lot of disorganization in his company. Mm-hmm. It helped them. It helped us. We went together, and now they're one of our best customers. So
I've had that experience multiple times when I was in purchasing.
Right.
I've been in the field with Pulte, and some suppliers would come in or partners would come in. they would sometimes give you the harsh truth. And you realize that sometimes maybe you didn't like the feedback, but they helped make you better. So yeah, totally understand that. Before we move on, I want to jump back to this leadership. So you got leadership, you got people, you got culture and customers. And I like this because you kind of start off by saying everybody looks at the results. However, the results come about when you have like these leading measures, right? They're already in there. If you focus on leadership and people, culture and customers, good things just happen. Talk to me about leadership, and are there any specific behaviors or processes that you have in your role of making the selection or attracting and recruiting leadership? Because I've had this conversation specifically about you when I didn't know you, probably 4 years ago with Jim.
Really?
Where he had identified you and had talked about you in general, had never mentioned your name, and said, there's this guy, he's perfect to lead the company, he's not ready yet. And he just stayed with it and stayed with it and stayed with it. So I feel like, at least in sample size of one with you, I know Jim's process was patient and slow,
right,
and go after the talent. What is your process for selecting as you build New South to the next level, understanding that the first letter in here is leadership?
Yeah. So number one, we just went through a reorganization where we pushed decision making closer to the field.
Okay.
So we instilled 3 market presidents.
Oh, you did?
One of them is a gentleman named Steve Melton, who's one of our top salesmen who was killing it.
Yes.
And Steve built that team, right? So when I met Steve, all the core talents are there, right? And here you go. It's your ship. It's up to you. And he's taken that and he's just accelerating. The results that he and his team are delivering are just ridiculous.
Okay.
Now, these other 2 market president roles, I've interviewed over 85 people for them. And I am ridiculously picky in who I put on the team, even to interview, because number one, like I said, the people I put on the team is one of my most important roles. Number two, it's not a God-given right to work in New South, right? Leading the great folks we have is pretty important. So I go through a rigorous measure of, number one, looking at their background, where they came from. Mm-hmm. Number two, doing some homework on them, and being in the industry for 23 years, we've all got good contacts. But number three, my perception is only one data point. So I have them interview with the entire leadership team and then some of their direct reports, and it's collaboration. Because I could have a great guy that's coming on board, that's data driven, customer centric, knows how to run a P&L, knows how to lead. But if he's got a personality conflict with the team, it's never going to work.
Right.
And then we obviously go through a battery of culture assessments, which are big.
Okay.
But number one is just knowing, humbleness, right? People, I think you and I talked about it. It's all about ego, right? Everyone gets on board, or everyone gets off the ship. And it's the leaders we have at every level of the organization drive that.
So of the 85, have you selected, are you over 85 right now?
I've got 4 in play.
You got 4 in play?
Yeah, I've got 4 in play. And it's been a long couple months, right?
So tell me about the time management there, because often we'll hear, hey, there's no talent in the market. We can't find people. And I'll say, just curious. And this could be a GM at a branch level, or this could be a CEO. And I said, just curious, for your own time management, how much time do you allocate daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly for this talent attraction, recruiting, whatever? And oftentimes we're like, it's a good question, Bradley. We don't know.
Yeah.
Now, I have the sense of that you do have time allocated for this. How do you think about that? Does it change, or do you say this percentage of my time for the year consistently, I should always be looking, because the L and the L times P times C squared equals results. That's the first one there. How do you manage that?
Yeah. So I dedicate about 6 hours a week to it. 6 hours
a week. Okay.
Yeah. So no matter what, and like you were speaking in yesterday, at the end of the week, I got to look back.
Okay.
And I do mine on Thursday nights.
Okay.
Because I know Friday is my recovery day. And if I haven't put enough time into it, I'm jumping onto it on a Friday and getting everything done.
Okay.
Clearly, it's either way too much or not enough if I've got 85 people coming through. But to me, that's important, right? You can have the right P, you can have the right C squared.
Yep.
But you have a 0 with that L, you're done.
Right.
You kill everything. And we're fortunate that our teams have really executed this year, and we're on track to double in size this year from last year. So
that is crazy.
Yeah, we're pretty excited. But if you look at that, they've done that without that L. Mm-hmm. And if I put the right L in there, that's just going to accelerate even more. So
tell me about your recovery day. You have certain days are for certain general activities. My mind is spinning right now because I often struggle, and I generally do it Friday, but I can't do it on the weekends. If I start thinking about work on the weekends, I'm not mentally present for the kids and the wife and all that stuff. Friday's your recovery day. You assess your week Thursday evening?
Thursday before I leave the office.
You do? Okay.
About 4:30, 5 o'clock, I start reviewing that. What did I accomplish this week? Okay. What should I accomplished that I didn't?
Yep.
And that goes to the top list for Friday.
Okay.
And then Friday is my day. As much as we travel, my wife loves it because I think I've been gone 25 out of the last 35 nights. So she's, yeah. That's why, I got to do something nice when I get home. But Fridays, I have a call with all my direct reports, 1 hour weekly catch ups. And between those is when I try to catch up on my recovery day. And then as much as I shouldn't, I do use my weekends. Yeah. So I'm normally up about 5 o'clock in the morning during the weeks and about 6 o'clock on the weekends. Okay. From 6 to about 8 when my family gets up is when I get everything done.
Yeah. Okay. I want to switch the direction here just a little bit because you have some deep domain expertise when it comes to sales as well. Been having some interesting conversations with folks that have over the last couple of years have seen the overall compensation packages for many of their sales professionals explode. And many of them have come to us and said, hey, we want to be thoughtful about this. We want to change the comp plan. I don't mind paying my top performers $600,000, $700,000, $800,000. We have a few clients who've paid their top sales guys $1 million. So we struggle with some of these folks who, quite frankly, aren't performing well enough on the job and yet are making $150,000 to $200,000. Those checks are hard to write. And I have struggled, I think, to articulate or to persuade them to say, let's just hold off for now because there's a lot of risk for unintended consequences. Here's what I do. I bring out smart people. I take my consulting challenges. I turn them over to you. How should we think about this? How do you think? Because you guys are experiencing the same thing.
Right.
How do you view this with your business?
So I look at the person, right? Okay. Number one is the worst thing you can do in a sales organization, because no matter what we do, no matter what business we're in, especially in our sector, lumber, building materials, concrete construction, whatever, plumbing, it's a sales organization. Mm-hmm. And I should say it's a profitable sales organization, right? That's what we want to be. Changing comp plans creates insecurity, consternation, and lack of security. So before we and we're talking about the same thing about changing comp plans, right? And we kicked it around a little bit, like how do we enhance it? How do we drive growth?
Right.
But what we don't want to do is cut. So the first thing I do is I come into an organization and I hear about that guy making $150, $200 a year. And I look at him like, he shouldn't be flipping burgers. Like, why is he here? But he's been here for years and we've allowed it to happen. Mm-hmm. So is that his fault or is that our fault?
Right.
And it's our fault. So the next thing you look at is you look at the number of accounts they have. And, I walked into an organization, the guy had 164 accounts. And
too few or too many?
About 3x too many, right? Yeah.
Right.
Maybe if he was in the 300 range, I'd go for it. Give him all the accounts. But 164 accounts. How do you effectively do that? And I don't look at it from a compensation standpoint. I look at that as we're holding the organization back. Because to me, the optimal amount of accounts is about 50. Some will have 40, some will have 60. Okay. But I think 50 is that sweet spot. Because you have normally your top 10 are your rock stars. Then 11 through 30 are those everyday ones that just need once a week. And the last 10 or 20 should be the ones that you want to cultivate. Mm-hmm. And those last 10 or 20 can change out consistently, right? But the other 114 is an opportunity for somebody else to come in and continue to execute and grow the business. But it's a tough conversation. We've done it with a few folks in our organization. What we told them is, hey, if you made X amount this year with 164 accounts, now I'm just using that example in this one, we're going to take away 80. And if you made $150,000 this year, we're going to give you that for the same year, right? But now you have time to get deeper with the accounts you have or find new accounts.
Yes.
But when you do that, if you don't do that, it's a drain on the organization. That's not fair. And it's not fair so much to the salesperson, but the people supporting them, the people that some of our guys, unfortunately, in our industry live paycheck to paycheck, right? It's fact. And I think it's our job to help change that. But you're holding everybody else down. So, and some companies make salesmen these heroes that they may or may not be. And I'm a sales guy at heart. I love our salespeople. That's what we do. But they've got to earn it.
Yeah. So I'd love to get your thoughts on how we end up here. A lot of intelligent people who've been running successful businesses for a long time. I would say it is the rule rather than the exception for me to come in and say, 164, 88. I'm in distribution. I've got 350. So why would we think we can continuously and intentionally deliver value to that many people, companies, etc. And yet it happens all the time. Any idea how we end up here? Why is this so common?
I just don't think we thought about it. Okay. I mean, quite frankly, it's that simple, right? It's like, hey, I've got Bradley and it's different by business, right? So the two-step business I ran, they needed about 100 accounts because they covered a wide swath of land. And it's a different sales call than a technical sales call for a highway DOT contractor.
Sure.
But we just said, hey, that's that person's territory. And we gave it to them. And we never looked at what's the art of the potential or the art of the possible with that customer.
Yeah.
So you get a customer that does, $5,000 a year and we're paying a commission on it. Is that really meaningful? And we were so, I think historically we've just, everyone's grown up in the industry together and that's Brad's territory. I'm not going to mess with them. And he's grown and grown and grown, but it's different to have, 50 customers when you're a $30 million company and you go to a $150 million company and now you have 90 customers or 100, right? No one's gone through the sales management process.
Yeah.
And I think when people do that, it's an eye opener, number one. And number two is you look at the impact of the bottom line. It doesn't hurt the salesman too bad. Actually, in most cases, and if you cover them, you're talking less than 5% of their income. But you do it on a global scale, that's a lot of dollars.
You mentioned the art of the possible with the customer. You come into an organization, you want to try to reframe how we look at the business with a salesperson,
right,
or a sales manager, or both. What does that look like? What is that conversation about the art of the possible with the customer? What does that sound like?
It's fun, right? So I have a real life example of this. It's happened about a month ago.
Okay.
We have a customer, and I won't say where they are, and they're huge potential. Okay. Huge, right? And we've had a salesperson on them for about 5 or 6 years, and they sold them about, say, $250,000 a year. When I spoke to salesman X about that,
yes,
they said, no, that's all they get. That's all we get. We get all their business. So I'm like, oh, I'm sure you do, right? If you do, should be no problem to sit down with the leadership, and I want to introduce myself. And to me, getting on the field is big, right? After being on board with New South about 9 months now, it's important to understand people and understand what our customers are saying. So I sit down with Customer X's president, and we're chatting, and just a great guy, real down to earth. And I go, so how much of your spend do we have? And people don't ask that question. And I think it's critical. How much are you spending and how much do we get? So we measure it. And to me, that's how you define the art of the possible. And I was talking to Salesman X on the way there, and you can't do that. I'm like, why not?
Ask for what you want. This is a piece of information that's really critical if we had it. Okay.
Right. If you've got this great relationship and you're knocking it out of the park, what if he says 100%? That's awesome. That's a feather in your cap. And it turned out we had less than 5% of their business. And I mean, jaws just dropped. Right. And it's yeah. So we made a move. We still took care of the salesperson on that account, and we put somebody else on that. And I think we're having some good success. But that's how you measure it, right? Now, you can't just say, hey, I'm going to drive from Fort Worth to Miami and we'll figure it out.
Right.
Versus I know I need this much gas and I got to take whatever freeway to get there, and that's your path.
Well, I love that because that is an executive leader who has a sales mentality. And too often we end up in these conversations or we ask questions where there's really no risk of rejection. There's no risk of hearing no. With that, there is. But again, that's one of these small pieces of information that can change everything.
Oh yeah,
so
absolutely.
That's really powerful. Appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
Tell me about, we were kind of both saying that we're both kind of book nerds. Any books that you have throughout your life or in your career, maybe things you've read recently over the last couple of years, or maybe early in your career that said really kind of shaped my thinking or accelerated my growth, or just changed the way that you think about being a leader and a business professional?
Yeah. So, the biggest one to me is The Art of War by Sun Tzu.
It is. Okay.
So I took martial arts all grown up. I taught martial arts to 8, 9-year-olds, which was awesome. The best job I've ever had, right? Phenomenal. But you think about it, and as I've grown, I used to be, and for the folks that are listening to this podcast, they're probably laughing right now, I used to be slightly aggressive. And as Jim says, you were more aggressive than you are now. I'm like, yeah, I don't think we would have chatted. But it was always, hey, you got to be in the fight. You got to go head to head, face to face, knuckle to knuckle. And you think about it, the concept of outthinking versus outfighting, especially in our market, our biggest competitor is $5 billion. I mean, they're huge, right? Yep. And they're great guys. And I know a lot of them personally, but if we go muscle to muscle with them, it's going to be some heavy lifting.
Yeah.
Versus, hey, how do we outthink and figure out what happens? And then once you figure out what you want to do, then you attack with fire and you execute. And every time I read that book, I read it about once every 6 months, and then, on tape, and then it's much more impactful when you read it versus listen to it. But you pull something new out of it, right?
Yeah.
And then the other one is 5 dysfunctions of a team. So when I was coming on board with New South, we do two management retreats every year. Just sit down and talk about where's the direction of the business and how do we execute. Ironically, I was reading that again, and the New South leadership team was reading it again. So our first management team, we were ready to execute.
Yeah.
But if you look at the 5 core things, trust, conflict, commitment, accountability, and results, nothing starts without trust. If I can't trust you working together and to have my back or to play your position on the team, everything else just doesn't work out. But to me, it's the conflict piece, right? And it ties back to the conversation we had a few minutes ago about, asking tough questions. Nobody wants to hear the word no. To me, when you hear no, that's when the game starts. That's when selling starts, right? It's like, how do I figure this out? Yeah. But, if I'm talking, our CFO and I and Barrett is phenomenal. One of the best CFOs I've ever worked with in my career. We get along great because we can say, that doesn't make sense. Or are you nuts? And we have that candor and that trust to go back and forth. And that's that conflict you need to have. But you see these organizations where everyone says, yes, everything's kumbaya, and there's little rainbows flying around. And they're getting waxed on the street, right? Because they don't have the ability to say, that doesn't make sense. And that's something we try to do in our cultures. Hey, if there's a driver in our Greenville branch, he can walk in my office and says, you guys made this change, but it doesn't help me and it actually hurts me. And okay, how do we fix it? So we put that up and down. But those 2 books I consistently read. I try to read them at least twice a year.
Okay.
And I've got to get better at reading other books. So there's more to life than just 2.
So let me ask you about conflict. We often find, especially in sales relationships, but I would just say in general, it's not uncommon to find people that in the general population are conflict avoidant.
Right.
I had a slide up yesterday during the presentation that said, traction requires friction.
I love that.
Right. And I didn't come up with that. Obviously, I stole that from somebody, but I was like, sometimes you need to have these tough conversations with customers internally, externally to move things forward. And yet for people that say, listen, man, I get paid on commission. It's easier for me to go along, whether I'm selling them 5% of the total spend or 70. It's part of what puts food on the table and allows my family to grow, right? Are there ways from a leadership perspective that you've been able to coach people into these more consistently on their own to actively seek out some of these conflicts when necessary?
Yeah. So I've done it a lot, especially in the last, probably say 5 years. Okay. And it's all by example. So if you have a customer and you walk in and they can't do that, I'm like, why not? And if you don't give me a good reason, I'm going to ask a question. And so a phrase that I used at the Mid-Am business, which was just a wonderful business to be a part of prior to coming to New South, was data driven. Okay. And those guys were nauseated over it, right? But they took the data and they understood, going back to the art of the possible, and they started asking tough questions to customers. And the success that team had over that 3-year period and continue to this day is amazing because they're taking that concept of understanding, hey, let's hear a no, let's figure out why, and let's break through it. And there's some guys like, Brandon and Larry and Mark, those guys just nailed it. And because they asked the tough questions. But people that don't ask tough questions, there's a character flaw in there somewhere, right? They're afraid of losing something. Okay. And if you're afraid of losing something, that's a flaw in your culture. Either a culture or the person. And that goes back to the LPCR, right? Yep. So something's flawed there. But if you figure out why, what's their inhibitants, and then you help coach them through that, make them a better person. Yeah. It's going to help them in their professional life. It's going to help them in their personal life. It's going to help them with their kids. I mean, whatever. So. Yeah.
Well, it has me thinking about yesterday on the panel after the sales training, we had Megan McCoy-Jones, and we were talking more about this new product. A manufacturer comes to her and, she's encouraged manufacturers and distributors to say, will you be an advocate for me within your organization? And you can see people just sit up in their chairs a little straighter thinking that if you ask, the CEO of $1 billion company that question, right, there's a good chance, unless you've laid the groundwork, you're going to hear no there. But that is the one piece of information, because if they say yes, well, you've gotten the stamp of approval from the highest levels in the organization. Her name's in the building, right? Are there other questions that come to mind when you said, hey, let's ask these tough questions, when you said, let's hear a no? Are there other questions that we haven't touched on? Because I feel like there's a couple of these that I'm just staring at. I need to think more about. Is there anything else here as we kind of wrap up that you'd say is These are the things that we need. We can't be afraid of having these tough conversations with our own people and our customers.
Yeah. So I think, one question I ask a lot is what would you do if you were me? And we get up in the morning every day, we brush our teeth or look in this mirror, and there's a reason for something.
Yeah.
And 95% of the time, that reason is the person that's looking at you when you brush your teeth. If you brush your teeth, which I hope you do.
Sometimes.
Yeah, only on Tuesdays, right? But that's the problem. So I say that a lot to our teams. I say that a lot to our customers. If you were in my shoes, what would you do? And that was when we were talking to the groups yesterday. They're talking about going in, how do we sell these people? I'm like, well, put yourself in their shoes.
Right.
If you put yourself in their shoes and say, hey, what would they be asking me? Or what advice would they give me? That's big. And a lot of times you're going to get some stuff you don't want to hear. I mean, I know I get all the time, but it makes you better, right? Conversely, if you tell people, especially from a customer standpoint, here's the opportunity in the market, or here's what you kind of like we talked about the folks that had the 15 or 16 invoices per delivery, helping people understand that maybe their baby isn't the cutest kid in the world.
Yeah.
But if you do this, it'll be the Gerber baby, right? It'll things can happen.
Yeah.
And they're not going to like to hear it, but hopefully they respect you for it.
Yeah. Well, when you said that question, what would you do if you were me? My immediate thought was you talking to your own people internally.
Yeah.
And then obviously, good question asked there, but you said to your customers as well. I was like, oh, yeah, I love that question. And I would also say it's probably very revealing if they say, oh, never really thought about that.
Yeah.
Well, then our relationship probably isn't that strong if you're not thinking about how we can work together more collaboratively and, progress faster. So,
right.
Well, hey man, this has been fantastic. There's all sorts of stuff that I'd love to dig in, but I appreciate your time. Any parting thoughts, or for any folks that are listening, we have listeners kind of from across the entire spectrum who want to learn more about you, about New South, what you guys are doing, maybe any parting thoughts, and then where people can find more information about New South and the team that you're developing and all the great things you guys are doing.
Yeah. So my key takeaway, I think I said it a few times, is whether your personal life, your business life, financial life, and no matter what industry you're in, it's up to you. It's easy to say, hey, I didn't get this raise, I didn't get that order, I didn't do X, my wife's mad at me. It's up to you. And the faster people realize that and really implement that, that's the action. That's your call to action. And then you have a fork in the road. Do I do what it takes to get what I want, or do I continue with what I'm doing and accept the results? So that's key. And then number two is about New South. Hey, we're growing. We got some good stuff going on. We have an amazing team of people. We did our first acquisition in November of last year. We've got a few more in the pike that hopefully get announced here shortly. And it's going to be a game changer for us. So, but it's, if you're looking for an organization that is people-centric, customer-focused, and you don't like what you do, give us a call. And whether you can work for us or not, we know our organization knows enough people. I'm happy to hook you up with another organization that, hey, it's a job you love. Because we don't save lives. We don't deliver babies. We sell bags of dirt and sticks of steel. And if we're lucky, we get to bend them not once, but twice. If we're really lucky, we get to bend them 3 times. That's all we do, right? It's not rocket science. And all of us in this industry have the good fortune of making a great living in a fun job. Yeah. So I think if you don't love what you do, go play golf.
Good. Well, man, appreciate you. I think that's a great place to end. Abhi Singh, thank you very much.
Brad, thank you. Have a great day.
All right, then. How did that go? Hopefully you enjoyed my conversation with Mr. Abhi Singh. Now, when we were together in Fort Worth for our annual Sales Fundamentals Workshop, Abhi and I got together and we also recorded video of this conversation. So on YouTube and Instagram, we're going to be segmenting these small snippets out to share more insights in different mediums for you. So keep an eye out for that. If you are not connected already, hit me up on LinkedIn, also on Instagram at Behind Your Back CEO. Thanks again to our presenting sponsor, Capital One Trade Credit. If you were interested in driving revenue and cash flow while decreasing risk, while leveraging an incredibly powerful digital platform that makes it easier for your customers to buy from you, check out Capital One Trade Credit. That's all we've got for you today. As always, thank you for listening. We will close out like we always do with our leadership mantra. You, my friend, are owed nothing. Deliver value first. Make it a great week.